This week is what crazy people have you hired?
Yes. Federal Bureau of Investigation encountering. One of the things people always, what I find interesting is how people think that the government doesn't know everything you're doing.
Yeah. So, okay, let's start off with an interesting little thought here.
Yeah.
So, we have given our DNA over to the government via ancestry.com.
Stupid. But
But
but it doesn't really
we don't really
matter.
care, to be honest.
It's all out there anyway, right? First of all, I don't believe those things.
It's not like, did you ever see the movie The Island, where Scarlett Johansson, Ewan McGregor, and they're being cloned? They're clones. They're very wealthy people in like the mainland of America or Scotland or wherever they're, because I think Ewan McGregor in the movie is from Scotland. Anyways, and so then they pay to have their clone on this little island, and then their clones escape.
Sorry, I missed that.
So, yeah, because I'm pretty sure our $100 to Ancestry.com bought us that.
Which I think is a big scam.
I'm totally kidding.
Scam anyway. I don't think any of that stuff's true. I mean, I've got a lot of Indian in me. My grandmother was, half Cherokee Indian,
And it doesn't show up in your
No, it doesn't
ancestry.
show up. I think that's conspiracy maybe. And I do think, though, that, and it changes. Your mother was part Jewish for a minute, right? And then all of a sudden she's not. Then she's all Scottish. And then, what the hell is that all about? I mean, it changes from 1 week to the next, or 1 month to the next.
Does it bother you that, like, your children are really different ancestry-wise?
No, because I just think it's all,
You don't think it means anything?
No. I very little, if anything at all, very little, Anyways, all right, so let's talk about what the government knows about you and what they don't. Because, I know that you and my 3 daughters, Brittany, Brianna, and Brecca, you all get into the conspiracy.
Yeah, and
maybe that's because of your generation.
Yes, it probably is. But also, it's because, honestly, COVID, I think you're like, what's happening or what's not happening? For me, at least,
Yeah.
that was an awakening point. And I wouldn't call myself a person who actually really believes the conspiracy theories. I just want to know about them, because I don't necessarily jump on board of all of them, but I think I want to know what could be.
Yeah, I guess what really turns me
you.
off is, number one, the flat Earth people. They're wackos, okay?
And
I hope I'm offending some of you wackos out there that are listening or watching this, because the Earth is not flat.
The firmament,
Okay.
yeah.
And then you got the firmament. Now I'm seeing stuff on TikTok about the people that live in the ice way underneath the Earth, that they're living in the ice. I don't know what they're called. The Iceman cometh. I don't know.
Is it like the Antarctica stuff?
Yeah. The Antarctica stuff. Okay, it's all crazy stuff. All right, but here's what I do want to touch base on.
Yeah, let's go.
The FBI knows a lot about you. The government knows a lot about you. I don't care if you're off the grid, if you're on Bitcoin, if you don't have anything, they still know about you. And I'll tell you why. You want to know why, Brianna? Okay, so this happened a long time ago. I guess it was probably 19, I don't know. Maybe it was 2002, 2003. And my aunt was working for me, Aunt Nancy. And she was running the call center that we had. And so one morning, she brought in the Dallas Morning News and put it on my desk and looked at me and said, "Hey," she's from Michigan. She had that nasal thing. "Hey, do you know these people, I think, work for us?" and there was a picture of 2 people. They were on the FBI's most wanted list. And she said, "They're working in our call center, Michael." I said, "Okay, well."
Wait, it's 2?
Yeah, there's 2. It was a husband and wife.
Oh, God. Okay.
And so much for our background checks, right? And so I said, "Okay, are they here today?" She goes, "No, they're not." And so I said, "All right." So I called my attorney.
Wait, so what were you feeling in this moment?
I thought this is crazy. I hate this. I didn't want, my first thing was selfishness. I didn't want bad publicity.
Yeah.
Because we have an insurance agency.
Right. And you can't make people worried
about their
money
product or where it's going.
Right.
I immediately thought of that.
Of course.
I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to say our name in the newspaper. These people are working for us.
Yeah.
They're in our call center. And these were an older couple too. They were probably in their late 50s, early 60s. And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, okay. And so the next thing I called my attorney, okay. And his name's Tony. And so I said, "Tony," I said, "here's the situation." He said, "Okay, let me see what I can do." And so then he made a phone call, and I had to go out of town. I had to go somewhere. I was back I think it was that night. And so the next morning, okay, I showed up at the office, and my assistant, Jan, was there. And also there was 14 cars there from the government, FBI cars. And there's probably 8 agents walking around there. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so I called my attorney, Tony. I said, Tony, what did you do? He said, I didn't do nothing. I said, what do you mean you didn't do nothing? He said, I called the FBI and I said, I have a client that believes that maybe that these 2 people are working with him in his call center, and I'll get back with you with more information. And he said, that's all. They only knew my name, the firm that I worked for, and that was it.
And for reference, the firm was the law firm he worked for. There was probably no association online or with you.
No, that's confidential information. They don't know who the client is.
I know.
It's a huge law firm.
Right.
It was 500 attorney law firm, and they're downtown Dallas. But here I am standing in the parking lot, and there's 14 black sedans here, and people walking around with FBI jackets on. Okay. And so I called him. I said, Tony, what's going on here? I have no idea. I said, well, they're here. He said, I didn't tell them your name.
Yeah.
I didn't tell them the name of your company. I didn't tell them squat. Now, how did they know that? How did they know that that was my attorney? And I've got a call center, because they obviously know everything. Right. And so, man, after, so I go in there, and these FBI agents, they're there. They were very nice. And there was a couple female FBI agents, which some of my sales agents were falling in love with. And they're carrying guns. They look so great. And so I said, listen, what do you want us to do? And I said, well, we're going to stake out the place, okay, until they come back, because they hadn't come back yet to work. And so they said, when's their next payday? And the next payday was 2 days from then. And so they staked out the place. And
did the stakeout, was it more like subtle, so then it wouldn't? Who know it? Okay.
Now, except for the 2 FBI female agents, they stayed in the office. I don't know for morale or what, but they were there in the office. And so everybody else was hiding. You would never know that they're anywhere around. They're so good at this stuff. And so then they asked, because here come payday, and it was on the 15th, and it was already 1 o'clock, and they still hadn't shown up for work. So they said to have Aunt Nancy, call them and let them know their paycheck is waiting for them.
I'm sure Aunt Nancy loved that role.
And so, because we gave them physical checks back then. We didn't wire money into their accounts or anything. So she called them, and they listened online, the FBI did, and they called them, and they said, okay, we'll be in this afternoon. And they showed up at 3:30, and they got arrested. And it was quite the deal.
Did you watch it happen?
Yeah. And I also asked for, I wanted a letter of accommodation, how we cooperated with them. Okay. And they did. They wrote us a letter of accommodation.
Does that go on a record somewhere?
I don't know. I'm sure it does somewhere. I'm sure.
But why did he want it?
Because just in case somebody.
For the record?
Yeah. We cooperated with the FBI. We're the good guys. Yeah. I'm sure Cash Patel's got a copy in his desk now. I don't know.
He looks at it every day.
Yeah, looks at it every day. That McIntyre. He's such a
he accommodated the FBI.
He's a patriot all the way. Anyways, the point is the government knows. They know. And I don't know how they know, but they know. And so, as far as the conspiracy stuff goes, they probably have some. My philosophy on this conspiracy stuff, like aliens from different planets, okay? There's 9 billion people roughly on this planet, right? Anywhere from 8 to 9 billion people at any one given time. And probably better than 40% have cell phones. I would say maybe 35%. That's a lot of cell phones. Yeah. And nowadays, everything's on a cell phone. You can videotape, Right. Nobody's taking a picture of one of these green one-eyed monsters walking around talking or zapping people.
How do you know they look green?
I don't know. But if they look like us, then that's a problem. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, and then they blend in and we have no idea. Right. So I don't know. Right. But the fact is, I just don't. And I don't believe that, Area 51, become president of the United States, and you get to go out there and give the alien a big purple nurple and then go back onto your, day. I don't believe that either. So, because there's too many people have access. There's too many whistleblowers. Now you have whistleblower laws. Somebody would have said, hey, listen, we got this lizard type guy sitting in this room in Area 51. Somebody needs to say something. And I don't believe that. I think the universe is vast, but I don't believe that that's the case as far as we know right now.
Okay.
Anyways, and I digressed a little bit on that.
No,
but
you're
the main thing is the FBI, the government knows everything about you. So,
And so how has that, since that experience, what did that change for you in terms of how you viewed the government or anything like that?
Well, I've always, for the most part, I grew up a Democrat until I went in the Air Force and then going to college.
Yeah.
And I realized that now I'm a Republican because I don't like this tax deal and government housing and rent controls. And so I learned that and from my econ teacher in college at Arkansas State University, where I went full time while I was in the Air Force. So that's when I learned all that. To go to your question, it made me realize that the government's huge and it's probably bigger than it should be. And I think some of our rights get violated in that process.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, but there's a movie out about Richard Nixon. And I think, who's that guy that does all those political movies? He's really talented. Don't always agree with him. But anyways, he directed this movie about Richard Nixon. And there was a line in there that, Richard Nixon, right before he resigned, he said, the animal's too big. He said, it's just too big and you can't deal with it. And so I think that's true, even though like right now, the government's in an uproar over, what's going on and Trump's going in there. He's the bull in the china shop right now, which I think is good, even though a lot of people don't. But I do think there's huge problems with the mass amount of government and just not even able to fire some of these people,
Yeah,
and we learned that in Doge a lot too.
Yeah. What do you think the effects of the Epstein files are going to be? Do you think there's going to be an effect? Because it kind of feels like this has dragged on for a very long time, obviously, but I know things have shifted as of recent. But yeah, what do you see culturally as the change that will come or not?
I don't know.
change?
I know in Britain it's affecting them a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, because of the royal family.
Yeah.
And it's affecting the pound and the British pound. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal about that stuff. And so I think it's going to affect a lot. I think, now you got the Clintons coming in for a testimony in front of the
Will that be televised?
I think it will. And so they've been putting that off. And so, everybody's saying Epstein didn't kill himself, right?
Right.
And, everybody thinks Hillary Clinton had him killed. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes for interesting TV. And so I don't know. What do you think? Because your generation thinks differently than my generation.
I don't know if it's going to change anything. It's interesting watching on social media, people are talking about how Pizzagate back in 2020, I don't know if you remember that. It was like that.
Was it all about the COVID stuff? Right?
During COVID is when it really became very big. I remember Brecca watched the whole, there was a YouTube and it would get taken down and whatever. And so I'm noticing that people are like, okay, finally, I've been telling all of y'all this, for a long time. And so, yeah, I think my only hope in it is that I hope that exposure does bring reform that's real.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of like the same thing. What's happening culturally in the world is being mirrored in the church right now. And so there's that exposure. And I think that God works that way often with exposure like that. And it's uncomfortable and it's upsetting. And obviously, the stuff from Epstein, it's horrible.
Well, one of the things that I think God is doing is getting his bride ready. And he's ripping the mask off Satan on national television.
Yeah.
Especially with all these either political leaders or church leaders that are being exposed.
Yeah. And it's just kind of people are being confronted with things. And I think we're seeing how they deal with the confrontation. And it's rough.
All right. So let's see. Back to conspiracies. We're going to go back to that.
So last night, okay, I have to admit, I did watch it came across my TikTok and I was like, I guess we're going to watch this. Miss Owens addressing Erica Kirk with she read a letter that she wrote to her. And it was interesting and it was insightful. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I'm not here to judge the truth of it. I'm just here to I'm observing what's happening. And so it was really fascinating because she brought up two things that kind of caught my attention about how kind of spiritual giftings that Candace had and Charlie had. This is according to Candace, and how they I think Charlie had a prophetic gifting, and so does Candace. But they talked about, or she brought up what's called the GATE program. And I had no idea, okay, what this was. And then I looked it up, and it's the Gifted and Talented program, okay, in public schools during a certain years. Okay, we all remember. I mean, I remember Gifted and Talented being a thing. Obviously, I didn't experience that. I was in a private school. And so it opened up a whole can of worms. And basically what they would do is they would flag children who they saw were really special. They would test them, and so they would probably realize over time, like, oh, this child seems special or whatever. Like, I don't know all that much about this. So people listening or watching, y'all probably know way more than me about this, but I'm just coming into, now I'm understanding what people have been talking about for a while. The idea is that they would pull children out who were gifted, and they would always give them fluoride. They would give them this little cup of fluoride, and many people have memory of this, okay? And it was, I think, documented. So this little pink drink, okay? And so what you find out later on, or what now we know, is that fluoride damages your pineal gland. So... Okay.
That sounds bizarro.
Right.
And I never even heard of the pineal. What is it? The canal give these kids fluoride? This is true. You're saying it's true, or just is what
I'm pretty sure this is true.
This is what Candace Owen says.
I Googled it last night, and it was also, the pineal gland, we're going to get a good definition of this, is a tiny pea-sized endocrine gland tucked deep in the center of your brain between the two hemispheres. Small organ, big influence. Melatonin production, biological clock, puberty, and
hormones. So what did the fluoride do to this gland?
Okay, so it does not help
the gland. It hurts the gland.
So
what they didn't want, these people were too smart?
No. Well, they were, so they felt like these children had special abilities. Okay, so if you're going to look at it from a Christian, like you believe in the gifts of the Spirit, they probably had a more leaning towards the prophetic, or they there maybe were a seer.
So did Charlie Kirk get this?
Yes, him and Candace, they've talked about that they were the pink drink. And so then they would do this special testing with these children.
So who does it? Oh, is public school.
Public school system.
Now I get to see where you're going with
The gifted and talented.
Okay, so this is where you're going with the government.
So what they would do is they would spot these kids who were gifted and talented, and they would then track them, and they would track them for government positions later in life. And so that's how I think people probably were found, like, you could be in the CIA later. They would know. And some people have crazier stories than others. Some don't remember what happened. Obviously they were kids, so there's that. But what they would do is they would track their abilities. But I was reading comments. Again, these are people's comments. I'm not saying this is the truth, but they would say that they would ask them, hey, do you know where this person is right now? And they would, if you want to look at it prophetically. But what tipped me off, and I was like, I'm going to look into this, because what Candace said, this is a hot word for me. She's like, Charlie and I talked about when we were kids how we could astral project. And I was like, okay,
isn't that demonic?
Yeah. And so that kind of tipped me off, and I was like, that's a strong word.
And the New Age use that a lot.
Yes. And so what I gathered from what she was saying, it's not that they were trying to astral project, they just could. And then they also had all these prophetic knowings. And so it was interesting because she pointed out some things that did not add up to her from the testimony of what she's heard publicly about Charlie. And that his adrenal glands the night before he was assassinated were he was getting really kind of freaked out. He had this feeling and this knowing, and he called a priest, had them pray over him. And so there was just some dynamics that seem a little weird if you're going to look at that testimony that she provided. So it was interesting to me because I'm like, okay, well, if the government knew, and why did they stop the program? Was it controversial? Did who stopped it? It's interesting to me. I just thought it was a little fascinating.
I know, I understand why you would, but
I'm not saying it was I find it to be odd.
Yeah, of course it's odd. If any of it's true, it's odd. It's crazy odd. And who knows? And I'm sure there's a lot of that stuff that goes on. And one of the things that I don't like, I don't know, maybe I just set this up. I don't like to get bogged down with that.
Yeah.
and because I want to stay focused on what I'm doing in the present.
It's important.
But I understand why you would think it's interesting.
It was, I mean, I
understand.
The only reason I was tipped off was because I heard the term astral projection.
So let me see.
Okay,
What's our topic?
Well, our topic was the FBI.
Yeah, the conspiracies conspiracy, the firmament and the Arctic people.
Yeah.
And I just think I think it's a huge distraction.
Yes.
I do. I think it's a big distraction. I remember back when Bill Clinton was president of the United States and he had this thing with Monica Lewinsky. Some of you might have heard about it. All right. And so anytime that stuff was coming up, then he would launch a Tomahawk missile from one of the ships out there out there in the Mediterranean, and he just send it over to Syria or send it to somebody and get a big distraction.
Right.
And there at the time there was a movie that came out was called The Tail Wagging the Dog, and it was with Dustin Hoffman and some other people. It was really good.
Yeah.
And it's all about that. And I do believe that the government sets up big distractions to take their don't look over here, look at the shiny object over here. So you don't have to see what's really going on over here. I do believe that.
Or they blow up a story that maybe doesn't deserve as much attention as some other things. I was hearing about that this week they're just trying to hide the Epstein files and some of the stories happening. But go ahead.
So anyways, I think, I do think that does happen and that does occur. And I don't think that's conspiracy. I just think it's the way it is.
Yeah.
They're going to throw something else out there, throw some chum out there and let them hit that for a while they don't look at this story so long. But and a bigger aspect, I think the church and I think the enemy does that in the church. And I think the enemy got us off where we should be right now. I know there's a lot of distraction in the church with things going on and which they need to be dealt with, but also let's stay focused on the prize, which is Jesus. Right. And I think when we get off that, who Jesus really is, I think that's an issue. In fact, I was watching, Wade Aaron, we had on our podcast not too long ago, which is great. He was up in California, and I was watching on his Instagram account, and he's up there. He's at Berkeley University or UCLA, and he's carrying the cross. And this one student, this lady, she's probably 65, 70. I don't know if you saw it or not.
I saw part of it, yeah.
Well, it was really fascinating. And I love that he's out there doing that. And that's the kind of work I want to concentrate on is those that don't believe Jesus is real, don't believe that, the Holy Spirit helped wrote the Bible, that don't believe this stuff. And this woman was really rude, but that shows to me that's more important than, than other things in the church. And I think the enemy is a master at distraction and divide and conquer. And I think some of that's infiltrated, thank you, into our government to where they've mastered this as well.
Well, and you make a good point about it's like if we just continue to bring light or what you focus on really does matter. And I agree. And then for the record, I would like to say that with conspiracy theories, the only ones I really like to look into more so is there a grain of truth that could potentially lead to something else? I was like, is the GATE program? What is that program? And when I was like, oh, it was real, but I don't know if that was really the purpose of it. It seems a little odd.
Maybe it's true. And how do people get, I'm sure there's an application for Central Intelligence Agency to go down in here and see your app. Now, let me see. Were you in the GATE program? And how do you feel about, how do you feel about fluorides?
Right.
Does that trigger you? Okay.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. But the fact is, some of this stuff is truth, and there is a grain of truth in it. What I don't like is people get obsessed with it.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah.
And I think some of the Gen Z and the young millennials get a little obsessed with it. And I think because of social media, TikTok and everything else, I think it's cray-cray to some extent.
I think for me, it's because of, loving history, being a history major, I want a working knowledge of a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And so there's that.
I can see that. I think that's healthy.
Yeah. And I want to know, because we're living through this, we don't know they're going to look back on and be like, that was the thing that's, either was the downfall of this or, and so I'm always like, what's happening or what did happen and why are we here right now doing this? Something I find really interesting looking at history through rose-colored glasses, I've noticed this thing there's a romanticization I can't say that word right now. Romanticization.
There you go.
Is that right? Okay.
You got it.
Of President George W. Bush. And I notice it's probably more the moderate group of people. And they're like, we miss him. They're like, when we thought he was the worst president, look at him now, because they're comparing him to Trump. And so it's such a fascinating thing to watch these people who
you mean the Democrats love him?
Moderates or whatever.
Well, he paled up with Obama.
Right. And so people are now like, it's fascinating watching this like he was the greatest. And so it's interesting because the hate of Trump is so violent that they're like, well, he was just the best man ever.
Yeah, and people have said that about Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
Okay.
And so they always, it's like that coming back. And so it's interesting. You're like, okay, it hasn't been that long.
Right. And when you talk about looking back at history and seeing what was that inflection point in history, if you look back at World War I, okay, it was the assassination of a
Franz Ferdinand. He was an Austrian. Franz Ferdinand. He was an Austrian diplomat.
Right. Not a big deal.
Implication.
They get assassinated.
Yeah.
This started World War I.
Yeah.
How many lives did that cost?
Yeah.
And how many billions and trillions of dollars and forever, and that was when the Paris Accord came in, right? And they drew new lines for Israel.
Right.
I mean,
crazy. And we're still dealing with that today.
100%.
So, okay, something that you sent me on TikTok recently, and I was thinking about this with the government, all of that, the show The Diplomat. Okay. And so
great show, by the way.
Yes.
Watch The Diplomat.
Yes.
It's on Netflix.
It's one of my favorites.
It's excellent. Done
very
excellent.
well written.
Yes.
Very crazy.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Okay. So you sent me a video or a TikTok, and it was like how they described why Iceland.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So can you go into that?
Yeah, about, why we want Greenland.
Oh, Greenland.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Trump said Iceland, too.
I feel like I've had my head in the sand on mainstream events for the last month, and I got to get back into it.
Yeah. So
anyways,
there's a scene in this show because what they did is had a diversion happen. And so the diplomat got called in by the vice president, both women.
The ambassador. And the vice president.
And the vice president. And she called her in to clear the air and show her why this is happening and what's going on in the Soviet Union as it appears with nuclear weapons and where they're located at. And Scotland is a base where we have nuclear submarines and where it's a point that we can possibly intercept nuclear weapons. And Scotland hates it. Scotland's they're pretty left wing, and they don't want it because it makes them a target. And so it set it up in detail exactly of why and what it does show without them saying it in the show. Okay, why we need Greenland. Okay, and so Greenland's a very big part of that, and it'll protect not only the United States, Canada, the Northern Hemisphere, and also the UK. And so it's just fascinating. It's interesting. And some of these shows are really, really good. And
because it's real.
It's real. It's real stuff. Yeah. And that's what The Diplomat does so well, which I think is fascinating. And so, that puts it into perspective of how things go. And I think it's one of those shows that really might be the closest thing, I think, to some kind of reality that goes on in high-powered politics.
I know that they've interviewed the show's creator, Deborah Kahn, I believe is her name. She has interviewed so many diplomats or so many ambassadors. So they tried to
get it right.
Let's bake this in.
And I know there's some drama in there.
Of course. And there's some, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I do think that, I think that what it does show you, and not that politically I necessarily have an agreement with the show, it shows you how quick these people have to be.
How smart they are.
It's like crazy, I mean, obviously, and you want them to be because they're...
Well, you look at Marco Rubio, okay? And I remember back when he ran for president the first time, and, he had that water incident on TV, and it was embarrassing. And so he wasn't that skilled at doing what he is smart, always smart.
Wasn't smooth.
But now, since he's been under the tutelage of Trump, I think he's really gotten good. I think at Charlie Kirk's funeral, the way he professed the gospel, fascinating. I've never seen the president's cabinet get up there one by one and profess the gospel. That was a unique thing. it hasn't probably been like that since our first 4 or 5 presidents, because they were all Christians, or some of them deists, but they were mostly followed the Bible. And so I thought that was fascinating. And so Marco Rubio is one of those guys, to me, is really brilliant. And, there's memes out there showing him shoveling snow in this and being he's taking on 25 jobs. Well, Trump's giving him more because he's smart. He can deal with more. Right. In fact, I'm torn between him and J.D. Vance for the next ticket. I'd like to see them both on there, but I think Marco is really, really smart. Anyways, I know J.D. Vance is too, but Marco's he's got a way of speaking that I think is interesting. So you're right. Some of these people in there are really, really smart. Now, there's some of them that are bona fide idiots.
Right, and that's scary.
And that's a nepotism, or that's a political favor, or that's something else, which is not good, which I agree with that as well.
What I do appreciate about the show and the character that it's centered around is she really leaving the politics of it aside. She wants to serve the country, and that's all she cares about.
Right.
And I think that there is...
instead of making billions of dollars, and they don't care about that.
She's a public servant.
It's a whole different thing. Yeah. And I would like to think that's the way they are.
I would hope.
Unfortunately, though, you do get people that go into Congress, which I'm for and against limited terms, right? Mm-hmm. Term limits. But some of these people go into Congress, they're broke, and they come out worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Why is that? I think that they should go into Congress or be a senator to pad their resume. Mm-hmm. Go in there and serve 4 years or 8 years, at the most 8 years, and then you're out. But then, I don't know. So there's controversy both ways on there. But all right, so conspiracy, government knows a lot about everybody, yes? Uh-huh. And I'll tell you this, and know this, God knows more than everybody, more than the government.
But also, this is what I always love what you say about the government knowing everything. When you're not that interesting.
Right. That's right.
You're really not.
You're really not. Right.
I remember there was someone I dated, and it was during COVID, and they weren't going to get vaccinated. Okay. I'm not vaccinated. I don't really care. Who knows that? Whatever.
Not vaccinated.
But they turned off their phone to talk to me about it.
Oh, because they were paranoid.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was at a height of paranoia.
It was.
Too.
There was this
a big thing of paranoia.
Yeah, and I mean,
people getting canceled for saying stuff.
Right. Kind of almost Cold War vibes.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're like, are they tapping your phone? And and but I think you're very grounding in the sense of you're not that interesting.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And you're not. And so, I mean, I know your phone hears everything. I'm glad the FBI knows a lot of stuff. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's only a bad thing if you're a criminal, and your ass is grass and they're a lawnmower. So I'll take that. I'll take that intrusion.
Yeah.
Because if something happens, if it hits the fan, I want the government to know they can go fix it.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. And I
know there's people out there saying, McIntyre, that's crazy. You don't want the government to know anything. Well, okay, you can live with that. And if you want to go out there and be in the middle of Wyoming somewhere where, you're totally off the grid, they'll still find you.
It is interesting. I know, as you're saying all these things, I hear all of the arguments in my head, and I get it.
The trolls.
I get it. Well, I get the arguments on both sides.
I know.
It makes sense.
It does.
To me,
it does.
It's not like I understand, because then you got people who are like one world order. Let's come in.
And listen, I'm in favor of small government.
For sure.
I'm 100%. I want the government off my back.
Right.
I want them out of my business. I want them out of my banks. I want all that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, I do. But also, let's deal with reality here.
Right.
And so, if you've got somebody coming over and they're going to put a dirty bomb down your street, I want the government to have a heads up on that dirty bomb coming down my street and killing my families. There is a give and take in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. But if you watch some of these things, we've got some really bona fide idiots in Congress. I mean,
Who's your favorite bona fide idiot?
Oh, my gosh. Secretary Treasurer Bassett, they were interviewing him, and the questions they were asking him were just so crazy. And it's just a political game, and it's just for clickbait, and it's just for fundraising. And I think that's terrible. I think that's just that there's nobody's getting anything done, to where these congressional hearings are just a joke and just for platforms. Anyways, I don't know why I got off that. I digress.
It's fine.
But I'm thinking that we do need government. We do need the military. And I'm all about it. The way we took out Maduro and went in there.
That was great.
Brilliant. Genius. I love that. And I think it's important. Cuba, is now next. I think Cuba's talking because Cuba wants some gasoline. They're running out of gasoline and oil and money. And those poor people have been...
They need it.
They need help.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see Cuba free. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
And so Marco Rubio has a direct tie to Cuba. His family's from there.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to see how God's playing all this out. So I believe God is in control.
Yeah.
And I believe we're not.
I think the Maduro thing is such a good argument for why you want the right people in charge to make the right decisions to free the people. That's really, really key there.
Right. And Venezuela is a beautiful country.
Yeah.
Very rich in oil.
Yeah.
And can be very prosperous. And the people have been held back for years. And so, all right. Well, thank you for watching the McIntyre Inc podcast. Thank you. I know we got way off on different tangents here with politics, with government, with the FBI, with all that, which is fun and interesting, in my opinion. And I think it's good to talk about these things. But I do know this, that Jesus is king, and he's the name above all names. So if you enjoyed this podcast, share it. Maybe share it with your friends, maybe your frenemies, maybe somebody that talks about conspiracy theories all the time.
Maybe if you think you're in the GATE program, contact me.
Let us know. Let us know. If you're the fluoride drinker doing shots of fluoride, I want to hear about that. We'll pray over you for that.
Know.
Yeah, in Jesus' name. All right. Thank you. God bless. Continue. Everybody deserves your very best presentation.